actually also, what is interesting is that the core exam is built for two purposes. One, it's a mandatory component for the CCNP, and two, it also serves as a prerequisite for the lab exam. Meaning, if we switch over to CCIE, if you want to become CCIE certified, then you need to take two exams. You need to pass the technology core exam, and afterwards you need to take the lab exam. Lab exam is still 8 hours. What else changed in this portfolio? It is flexible in the sense that you can start wherever you want. You can do your CCNA, or you could start at CCNP level immediately if you want to do so, or you could straight ahead go for CCIE. So where CCNA was a prereq for CCNP, that is gone at this point in time. You can start your journey wherever you want. The other key principle that I mentioned is value. This new model provides you instant recognition. You see, if you have a look at a specialist level, what is that really all about? Let's say that you do want to become CCNP certified. As I said, you need to take two exams. Any single of those two exams will result in a specialist certification. Meaning, if you want to become CCNP certified, you start your journey where you want. You start with technology core or with the concentration exam, doesn't really matter. If you pass one, then you get a specialist certification out of it. If you pass the other one, you get another specialist certification. And in addition, you actually get your CCNP. So what does this mean at CCIE level? If you think about it, today you look at social media, you see a lot of people that actually say, hey, I'm CCIE written certified. But honestly, there is no such thing today, or there was no such thing. But in the future, you're actually, if you pass that prerequisite, the technology core exam, you actually will be able to use that to build your profile online, and you can actually have something to brag about. You at that point in time, you will have a technology core specialist certification. What happens with regards to the policies at CCIE level? I did try to cover most of the most important changes. Again, just I guess the last slide before we dive into, we have a closer look at the format, but I anticipated there would potentially be a lot of questions around this. So the main policy changes are documented here. With regards to certification, as I said, the technology core is now the new prerequisite for the expert level exams, and all certifications will be valid for 3 years. Today, for the CCIE, that used to be 2 years, plus 1 year in suspended mode before you actually become inactive. So that year of in suspended mode is gone. You'll be active as a CCIE. Once you're active, you'll stay active for 3 years. And if you do not recertify within that time window, then after those 3 years, you'll go from active to inactive. So there won't be any kind of grace period. With regards to recertification, we had continuous education available already for CCIEs. And that remains available as a means to recertify. What is changing is that in the past you needed 100 credits to get recertified, that today you will need 120 credits in order to recertify. You can earn credits through taking exams, trainings, item authoring, attending Cisco Live sessions. In addition, we kind of removed the amount of CE credits that you can earn through attending sessions at Cisco Live and through item authoring. There used to be a cap for both of those, and I guess one of the best things about CE in the future is it's going to be for free. So the administrative fee that was there in order to process your CE credits, that is also gone. Trying to preempt the question that might come up with regards to Cisco Live this year, because Cisco Live will be digital. this year. Unfortunately, for the Cisco Live Digital 2020, there won't be any CE credits that you can earn because it's actually kind of a digital event, and it's hard for us to kind of verify if you actually attended or watched through the different sessions online. But hopefully in the future we can have again Cisco Live as one of the options for you to get CE credits. Any FAQs can be found on the link that you can see right here. If you have any specific questions with regards to your own unique situation or you're looking for specific answers, you can always open a case at cisco.com/go/cert-support. So here we are, the subject of this very webinar, the new lab exam format. Let's compare it to what it used to be before. Previously, we had 2 to 3 exam modules, and the skills that we were testing you on within those modules were if you were able to diagnose, troubleshoot, and configure given network requirements, given specific constraints and requirements. So what is changing in the new scheme of things? We will be focusing on the entire network lifecycle. So one of the most important changes that you'll see here on this specific slide, that we're throwing in design into the mix. Design is a skill that is expected from CCIEs today, and Mark, in one of the next slides, Mark will actually be kind of explaining what level of design that we are looking at, and to kind of assure you, hey, if we have or introducing design into IE, does it mean that CCDE is going away? For the CCDEs on this call, the answer is loud and clear, no. CCDE is there and is there to stay. Will there be potential changes to the CCDE program? I mean, potentially, clearly, we are always looking at evolving our program, and I anticipate that in the future there might be changes to the CCDE program as is, but it will definitely not disappear. So in addition to adding design, there's one additional or 2 additional kind of components that we're adding into the mix, and that is automation and network programmability. Those will be embedded in every single blueprint. We can see that networks today are fundamentally changing, and automation and network programmability play a key role in this. And if you have a look at our lab blueprints, you'll see that automation and network programmability will be embedded in every single blueprint at expert level. So a little bit diving deeper into that 8-hour lab exam. So the lab will be 8 hours. There will be 2 modules within those 8 hours. 2 modules, 1 blueprint, and 1 flow. And I'll explain what that means. So let's start off with the modules. So 2 modules. You walk into the lab, you start with module 1, which will be all about design. It's a module that will be, you'll have up to 3 hours to complete that module. It's scenario based, meaning you'll be presented a scenario. Again, you'll get further details during this very webinar, but you won't have any access to any of the devices. If you complete module 1, after completing module 1, you will move on to module 2. Module 2 will be about deploying, operating, and optimizing the network. There will be a progressive storyline within the modules, but also between the modules, meaning in module 2, you will deploy, operate, and optimize the network that you designed in module 1. And as always, there are a few disclaimers about that. We'll go through these in a second. But important thing is, at this point in time, there are 2 modules, 1 module focusing on design and a module focusing on deploy, operate, and optimize. So 2 modules, but only 1 single blueprint. If you have a look at those blueprints, you will see there is kind of a disclaimer there saying your knowledge, skills, and abilities on these topics will be tested throughout the entire network lifecycle unless explicitly specified otherwise within this document. What does that mean? It means that any single topic within this blueprint is fair game in any of the two modules that we looked at. So you could potentially have network infrastructure questions within the design module, but you'll also have network infrastructure questions within the deploy, operate, and optimize module. We will be respecting blueprint weightings across both of the modules. The blueprint, so one single blueprint, and that blueprint should be, I guess, the first thing that you need to look at if you prepare for your exam, to kind of make that kind of self-assessment on where you are and if there are any kind of gaps to fill. So we have two modules, one blueprint, and there's also one flow. Mark, you want to cover this one?
Yes, I can do that. So the idea of the exam, that way we build it with the two modules, is that you will have, as Eric mentioned, you'll have the design and this deployment module. But the idea is that you only need to prepare with one blueprint in mind. So even in the design module, the questions you will get will be mapping to a blueprint topic. And as well, in the do module, you have the exact same blueprint to focus on, meaning that you can do, sorry, I've just dropped a pen here. No matter which module again, one of the questions you will have will be focusing on a specific topic. Inside the blueprint domain, we'll have all the, you will see, the details about spanning tree, the MPLS, whatever blueprint we're talking about. So we do this to make sure that you can focus on what you need on a single blueprint. And the idea is just to make it easier for you so you don't have to prepare for one mindset for the design module and another mindset for the configuration part of the implement, the deployment and operation and things like that. So as Eric said, this is about making a whole story. We're not going to have these as two individual components. So the modules are going to be as one. We are trying to, we can't guarantee that for sure because there's a lot of dependencies on the storyline, but we try to, what you end up with towards the end of the design module will be what you will be working on within the within the module 2, within the do module as we call it. So Eric, if you could just go to the next slide, please, because here, as Eric mentioned, we have had a lot of questions about the relevance in terms of the CCIE design module compared to the CCDE, and why do we need both in terms of designing. And of course, this is going to be something that we have been very aware of, so this we're going to try to just explain exactly why we've done the way we've done it. So in this case, if we look at the CCDE, and there we focus a lot on teaching the candidates to work with business requirements, technical requirements, taking inputs from various stakeholders in the company, the client, whatever it is, and then map that into a design document that is called a high-level design document. Basically, this does not include any configuration details at all. This is about mapping the requirements into a functional platform or solution, whatever we're working with in the case. Well, what we try to do here is try to mimic what goes on in the real world. So it's not something that's specific to the exam. But what usually happens is when you have a high-level design, you will be working on identifying solutions, circuits, what kind of bandwidth do we need, all these kinds of things that make up the solution. But once we get to the end of that, this is where it gets handed over to somebody else, and that's usually, in many cases, it's going to be the CCIE, who will be responsible for the low-level design of actually providing a lot of configuration details into the high-level design. So the CCIE will be responsible for implementing, will be responsible for generating the now required configuration, and will be in charge of all the nitty-gritty details that the CCIE will not worry about. Stuff like HSRP timers, spanning tree diameter, if you work on that kind of thing, whether it's going to be routed access or a layer 2 access, that is completely up to the CCIE to get all the details in place for that. So these two go hand in hand in the real world. So the DE hands over the project to the CCIE, who gets started with the staging, with the configuration, and the deploying things. Of course, there's a two-way communication, so we need to be able to go back and forth between them. But for the CCIE exam itself, we are going to be focusing on the low-level component of things. So you can imagine, if you want to use a metaphor, that when you get into your exam, you get into the design module, you could be seeing something that has been generated by a CCD or been some line of thoughts that have been thought about from a CCD perspective. But you don't have to worry about things like financial constraints, technical requirements. Those things are, of course, business requirements. You don't have to worry about these. These are, let's say, in the domain of the CCDE. So the IE is all about getting things to work, basically, and fixing things if they're broken and whether they need to be redesigned if they do no longer live up to the expectations. So on the next slide, Eric, if you can advance, please. This is trying to show you what the different approach would be from a DE question if this was the CCD practical exam versus the CCIE design module question. So if we look at the CCD question to the left, that's going to be more, you've been given some requirements from the CTO in this case, what optimal van topology is it correct to choose based on the requirements that you would always be presented with. And in this case, you can see this is pretty high level. We're just kind of working on a dual MPLS cloud from different service providers, a single MPLS cloud, DMVPN or SD-WAN with a combination of MPLS and Internet. Whereas if you take the same approach or the same question type with the EIE, would be if we assume that option A on the left-hand side was what the DE decided was the correct solution. Now we have an issue where we have to ensure the time-critical traffic is sent a specific way. How do we achieve that? Do we use route maps? Do we use GRE tunnels? Do we manipulate the administrative distance, or do we use ACLs? These are things that the CCE do not worry about. So this is a decision that you as a CCIE candidate will be challenged with figuring out based on the information that we give you, what is the correct answer for this case. So we are not testing you on the DE side of things at all in the IE design module. That's why we still have a DE exam. So yes, I think that is about that for that one. So Eric, if you can move on to the next slide, please. As you can see, the design module is about low-level designs. And in order to deploy any network, you need a good foundation. You need a low-level design that takes into account whatever is relevant for the current project. So you need to understand what are the different technologies capable of, and then figure out the requirements that you are given as part of the exam, which solution is the correct one. And as always, when we're dealing with design, it's not necessarily a binary answer. It's not necessarily going to be true or false. So to some extent, there will be questions and items where we can provide you with partial scoring, which means that it might be a suboptimal solution, but it's not failing to work. But it's not just what is the optimal solution given the requirements. So that means that you will have, let's say, a chance of getting 1 point, whereas the optimal solution could be worth 2 points. That is why we do not give away the point values in the design module, simply because it would not make sense to present them to candidates because they can't use them for much, because that might not be the value that they get because they chose a suboptimal solution. Another thing worth mentioning here is that we will provide you with all the resources you need during the exam. And this is going to be something that Bruno and Eric will be showing in the next webinar, is how this works and how you get presented with these resources. The resources can be emails, it can be chat windows, it can be documents that you have to read and figure out what's actually written in there, and then figure out what to answer for the question. But it's also worth noticing that the time you have is going to be 3 hours maximum. If you finish, let's say, at the 2-hour mark, you will not be able to take that remaining hour to the next module. So that means if you finish in 2 hours, you'll immediately start your module 2, but still with 5 hours, you won't get an additional hour for that. So that's important to mention here. So next up is just going to show you some of the type of questions that we can have. And this is something that mimics the real exam environment as well. But you'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see a traditional multiple choice answer. Nothing is different there. The thing here that is kind of new to this is the one on the right, which is a matrix of options where you will not necessarily be told exactly how many options to choose, but you have to choose based on the requirements that you see, based on your knowledge of the technology in question. You have to check all the relevant boxes. Of course, this, if you don't know how many to choose, you don't know if you have to choose 5 or 6. But again, you do this based on your knowledge and your skill sets. And this is where we can make use of partial scoring to make sure that you get, if you get only 2 of the 3 columns right, if that's how it was scored, then you will still get the points for those that were correct in that. So these are the new type of items that we haven't been used in the past. We have another type, which is multiple items, where you see that we have 2 questions in one item. So before you can advance to the next item, you have to answer both questions. In this case, this is going to be a drag and drop in the first half. You have to drag from the left to the right. And then you have a multiple choice below. And again, there's nothing new in this, but the new thing is that we combine multiple questions and they are treated as one item within the exam. They just have multiple questions in the flow. So the flow of the exam, that's where you have to pay attention when you sit at the exam. Once you start, you log in, you'll be presented with a set of storylines. You will be presented with some topology drawings. You will be presented with some background information about where you're going to be and which role you are assuming. You can be a consultant, you can be a staffer at the company that you're pretending to be working for. But with each question, there might be a new set of resources available. It could be a response to something you chose in the previous question. You can get a say, okay, thank you for your information, or thank you for your insight. Next up, what do we do? There's a kind of a follow-up, and that can include some new information that you need to take care of and take into account. You might get some device outputs, as anything can be presented as a resource that is relevant, and you can be sure that whatever you need will be in those resources somewhere. All the information will be there. It's not that we will ask you a question that is outside the context of the resources that we presented to you at any point. And yes, I think next slide, please. This is the guidelines, and this is the one directly we will be presented with in the once you start to log in the exam. But definitely, this is something that Eric is much more into than I am. So take it away, Eric.
Thank you, Mark. So first bullet, these are the actual exam guidelines that are specific to the design module, and then we touched upon several of those. But what is important, this is pretty much a copy-paste of what you'll see in the guidelines when you actually take that design module. So first bullet is kind of saying what Mark just said, all relevant resources that are needed to successfully complete the module are provided within the module. What does this mean is that the resources that you will be provided, those emails, topologies, chats, all of them are very relevant and for you in order to make a decision on how to answer that question. Not all of the questions, you should not assume at any given point in time that all of the questions are about best practices. All of these questions are tied to a given scenario. So all of the resources will help you make a decision on how you need to proceed within that story, on what answers you need to select for what questions. There will be 30 to 35 web-based items within any given design module. The resources, we talked about those, very important in this module. You'll get a set of resources in the beginning of the exam, and as the module progresses, there will be additional resources that will become available. All of the resources will be stay or remain available through the remainder of the module. But if you move on from question by question, you cannot go back. You cannot return to a previous question. But as I said, the resources, they will remain available. As always, if there's any issue with your lab, with your exam environment, we will have proctors available on site to help you out. Mark said it, question points values will not be visible within this module. Of course, you can always provide us with feedback on the item. There will be access to Cisco Online documentation. What set of documentation? That's of the, let's say, depends on the EPM. He kind of makes that decision, make sure that you have access to the relevant Cisco Online documentation. So if you're interested in figuring out more on that, then you can always be sure to actually attend the webinars that my team will be setting up in the next few weeks. You have 3 hours maximum. If you finish early, you can start with the next module, and there will be also kind of an additional environment or an additional place within the actual delivery engine where you can help, or where we will actually help you understand how you can navigate within the module and what functionalities that are available within the module. Next week, the webinar will be touching exactly on that. So this was about module 1, the design module, and I guess that's one of the biggest changes that we have within our 8-hour network. So moving on to module 2, where at this point in time you will be deploying, operating, and optimizing the network that was designed into module 1. This is a 5-hour module, and looking at some of the Q&A, I can see people asking, hey, what happened with troubleshooting? What happened with diagnosing? They're still there. I mean, if you deploy, operate, and optimize, I mean, during those different phases or steps of the network lifecycle, you will be doing troubleshooting. You will be diagnosing issues. So all of these skills are, at this point in time, still embedded within that module 2. And that module 2 is, I mean, while you see 3 boxes, this is one single module. So you will be having questions where you will need to basically set up the network. Parts of the network might already have been set up for you, where you need to kind of tweak it or adjust it to changing requirements, or sometimes you'll need to optimize it. So all of these tasks, deploy, operate, and optimize, are kind of all thrown together within that 5-hour module. That module is hands-on. you saw on the previous slide, there might be a few web-based items in there too, but primarily it will be hands-on, and it's from the look and feel, it will be very close to what you know are configuration exams to be in the past. So, as I said, you will be building the network that you designed. That being said, the network will be very similar, but it won't be identical. At the very least, what you'll find, what is going to be the same, is a topology, the diagram, the IP addressing scheme, and the set of devices. So where in the past you had 3 modules, and every single module was based on a different topology, here we're looking at one single topology that will be used throughout your 8-hour lab exam. If you have a closer look at the exam guidelines for this specific module, again, this is kind of a copy-paste of what you'll find when you walk into the lab. And the first bullet is a disclaimer, hey, look, this is similar, not necessarily identical. What we're trying to say here is that all of the information that you need to successfully complete this specific module is going to be available in the module. So you won't need to think about, okay, what did we say in that design module? I mean, at that point in time, it might be irrelevant. All of the information that you need will be available at your fingertips within the specific module. If you lock yourself out of any of the devices, it's going to be your responsibility to recover the device. Big difference between the do module, we like to call it the do. I guess you all figured out that the do is the D for deploy, and then the O for operate, and the second O for optimize, and we typically refer to it as the do. But within the do, there is no kind of partial scoring provided, so meaning a question is or correct or not. If a question is worth 4 points, you'll get those 4 points if you meet all of the requirements and restrictions within a question only. Else you'll get 0 points. If you need any clarification on any of the questions, or you suspect there's an issue with your lab devices or exam environment, and the proctor will be available to help you out, but be ready to show why you think that error is on our side. And this is pretty much similar as in the desk. You can provide feedback, you have access to online documentation. When you finish your exam, make sure that all of your devices are accessible. I mean, you guys can go through this again at your discretion, look at the recording. But this is pretty much, again, repeating copy-paste of what we have in the lab. So useful for you to know, no surprises when you walk into the lab. Another question that I saw coming up in the Q&A, when do I pause? You actually pause the exam. There are 2 conditions. You need to score higher than the aggregated pass score of both of the modules, and you need to score higher than the min score set on each of the modules individually. So what does that mean? If you look here at the drawing in module 1, you will see that we have a min score and a pass score set. The same is actually true for the for module 2, where we also have a min score and a pass score. So the first requirement is actually saying you need to score higher than the aggregated pass score. So if you add up the pass score of module 1 and module 2, then you have that aggregated pass score. And then the min score is kind of indicating, okay, what's the minimum kind of, what's the minimum that you need to score on that particular module. So this is kind of allowing you to compensate a little. If you do well on the design module, but you don't do great, and maybe your score would be in between the min and the pass score, then you can still pass your exam overall by doing better than within that module too. So the min and the pass score, while it might seem complicated, to some extent it gives you a little flexibility to compensate the fact that you might not perform super well on one specific module on that day. If you fail the exam, then you will get a score report. If you pass the exam, then you'll get an email saying, hey, congratulations, you passed the exam. So if you fail the exam and you get that score report will indicate if you passed or failed any given of the modules, and it will also indicate how well that you performed across both of the lab modules, and that is kind of important here. This is across both of the modules, so this will basically give you feedback on a per domain level, on a per blueprint domain level, on how well that you performed. But this will be kind of a combination of your performance in both of the modules. So what's next?
Definitely a lot of webinars coming up. As Eric already mentioned, next week Eric and Bruno will be telling you about the actual exam environment delivery engine. This is still going to be on a generic approach. It's not going to be track specific in any way. Once we get that, we start on May 27th. We start with track specific webinars where the member of the team that is responsible for that exam will cover everything you need to know with anything that is more specific to the track. These go on, I think that we have all the dates in the book by now, so please go check the link at the bottom of the slide here to see what the dates are, but they are all in the planned now, so you're ready to go. So if you're preparing for CCIE security, then I definitely would recommend that you come in for the next week's event too, and then join the CCIE security event on June 10th to get all possible information, because this is about, we want to make sure that you are as prepared as you can be for the big day. And the best way to do it is provide you with as much information as we can give you, so you know what to expect from a user experience, how does it work, where do I click, how do I navigate the exam environment, and things like that. So definitely, we highly encourage you to use these webinars as part of your preparation for the exam, because we can give you some information that you will not be able to get anywhere else. So highly recommended to do that. I think with that said, I think it is time for Q&As if you have anything. We've gotten a few in the Q&A I can see. I've been responding to a few as well. So I don't know, Carlo, any good ones?
Yep. Okay, all right. So again, if you have a question for our speakers, please use the question and answer panel as opposed to the chat screen. It just lets us kind of organize questions as they come in. All right, so I do have a couple here. First one is, let's see here. Will troubleshooting be built into the configuration section of the exam, or will the configs be clean without errors for us to work with? Will you guys be able to talk on that?
It will be a mix of both. So in the past we had a troubleshooting module where you basically had to troubleshoot a network that was pre-configured or broken within the initial configs. So here you'll find that within the deploy, operate, and optimize module, you'll need to do different things. You'll need to set up, configure the network, but you might also need to troubleshoot the network and fix things. So it is fair to assume that there will be parts of the configurations will to some extent be broken apart. Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Let's see here. Okay. I don't know if you'll be able to talk about this, but will you release any training material for the i.e. like the 360 program that was released prior? If so, is there a timeline for that?
Yeah, that's a good and interesting question. Honestly, It's something that we are at this point in time looking at, if it makes sense to actually do that. I mean, first things first, if you are looking into getting ready for your lab exam, then please do make sure that you attend these webinars that my team will be setting up in the next few weeks. They will actually provide you useful insights on how to prepare for these labs, and there are different things with regards to preparation. One is training material, definitely, but two, and I guess is probably the most important thing, is getting access to some of this equipment. If you looked at Enterprise Infrastructure Blueprint, you saw that we actually do have SD Access and SD1 into our blueprint today. So for SD Access, I mean, if you want to prepare properly, you need to have access to DNAC. You'll need some physical Cat9Ks as well in order to prepare. So training program, access to devices, all of these things are being looked at, and definitely please do attend those meetings with my team, where you can also provide your feedback and your input on what you guys need in order to get ready.
Awesome, thank you. All right, let's see here. This question, the attendees ask, or one attendee asks, would you say the new exam scope will go more into depth or into deep, or be wider than the old CCIE exam? And then how will automation be incorporated in the lab exam?
So there are multiple questions in there. CCIE has always been about breadth and depth, and that's not changing. I would say that the breadth is to some extent even expanding a little with the addition of that design module. Automation and programmability is embedded within those blueprints, but that's only kind of, at this point in time, I guess, kind of a natural addition, and it really depends on the different tracks to what level that we'll be throwing in automation and network programmability into the mix. So have a look at those blueprints for those specific tracks, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Okay, I think that is all the time we have for questions. However, what we'll do is continue to submit your questions if you do have a question, and we'll go through that and get that filtered list answered and posted with the recording when that becomes available on the Cisco Learning Network. I've placed the link in the chat box for those who are wanting to register for upcoming sessions, as well as review this recording. Again, it will take about 3 to 4 business days. Before we wrap up, Eric, Mark, is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience?
Definitely thank you for attending this session, and please do spend time over the next few weeks in trying to attend some of these others. If you're preparing at this point in time, we definitely, my team and myself, definitely want to be available for you guys and help you guys on getting where you need to be in order to be successful in your next CCIE lab attempt, whenever that might be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just gonna say thank you for this as well, and then we look forward to be assisting you